Welcome back. This is Nelly's BS. I am your host, Nelson DeMello. And yes, it stands for Bible study. Or does it?
I don't know. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good take.
To summarize the last 2 weeks, because I feel like I was just kind of rambling on and I didn't fully get my ideas out, I think. But I was actually trying to merge those two ideas together into this one thought. We're not wise enough, okay? We don't need what we think we need. We tend to need something deeper that goes beyond what we can really fathom we need. Let me give you an analogy, and then I'll give you a biblical example. So, analogy, when you're 5, you're like, when I grow up, I'm going to have all the candy I want, and you can't tell me no. And you know, you get a little bit older and you're like, yeah, no, that's crazy work. I'm going to get cavities, going to get sick. I won't survive to the end of the night, you know, like it's not going to work. And then, you know, you're 15, you're saying, when I grow up, I'm going to do whatever the heck I want and go wherever I want. And then, you know, you're at that age and realize maybe limitations are good. You know, maybe structure and, you know, having a schedule is good. You know, going to sleep at a decent time every day, that's a good thing. So we're just not wise enough. Even here, where we are in our life, we are not wise enough. We want things for us that we think will make our lives better, will fulfill us more. Whatever the case is, we think that'll be the thing. And it may be, it may not be. But we are not wise enough. That's one thing that we need to understand. And what that goes into, there's the story of the paraplegic coming down from the roof. And Jesus says, "Son, your sins are forgiven." And everyone is like, well, I mean, we know what everyone's thinking. But us as a reader, as a modern day reader, is like, Jesus, he wants to walk. What does his sins have to do with anything? And it's because Jesus understood that deeper than him wanting to walk, his need for walking, his need for they could have given him a different social life. It could allow him to work, which would, you know, give him dignity. He would stop begging, you know, like these things are true, but deeper than that, Jesus knew, and for all of us, right? Because this paints a greater picture that the deepest thing that needs to be dealt with, that trickles onto everything else, is our sin. With that being said, what we think satisfies us never does, right? We thought relationships would satisfy us. We thought that maybe a promotion, a job, a group of friends, the right church, a hobby, anything. We're like, now my life is worthwhile. And does it really? You know, at the heart of hearts, does it? I'm confident to say no. So what then happens is when we understand that God cares for our deepest needs, then one, we can understand the jealousy of God in the proper context. If he understands our deepest needs, then how he's molding us and informing us, the limitations he puts in our lives, it is what makes our life sustainable eternally. If you belong to him and he is now the Lord of your life, and as the church, we are his bride, so he's our husband, and we submit to that authority, and we allow for him to dictate the pace that we walk in, the direction we walk in, how we interact, you know, all of these things. And it's not cookie cutter, right? If we're living and walking by faith, my journey is going to look different than yours. But it's a recognizable journey nonetheless. With that being said, even in our ideas, sometimes I think we grasp onto these ideas hoping that it will satisfy something that we're missing. When I fell for, well, yeah, there's plenty of half gospels, let's call them. It doesn't have to be, false gospels, but half gospels. It's not the whole thing. It's not the whole truth. It's just the part of the truth that I liked and emphasized more than anything else. But that truth, what was that? We can talk about the emotional prosperity gospel or hyper grace. I think with hyper grace, what it was I needed the validation that I can be anything. If I were to become anything, that I would still be loved. I think I really just needed to test those waters. And lo and behold, it's true. The problem with hyper grace is you can't deepen your faith and deepen your love for God. You can't mature your faith and mature your love. It's like a couple that are just having casual sex. Like you're not, like, the intimacy is there, the enjoyment is there, but that feeling of home and the feeling of, I can give myself completely to you and I can trust you and I can depend on you, can't happen in casual sex, right? And hyper grace is that same thing where, you're getting the excitement, you're getting a piece of it, but you can't get the whole thing. And if you want more, you're just going to have to straighten that part out, right? With emotional prosperity gospel, I guess I thought that a wise life, holistic, like following Jesus holistically would make your life better. How would I say that? But I would take that to the extreme, maybe, where I thought that following God, at least, like, if I followed God, then I would feel loved no matter what's going on in my life. And I would feel joy no matter what was going on in my life. And I would feel the peace no matter what was going on in my life. And although that is true, it is tested. There are going to be seasons where you don't feel those things. You just have to believe it to be true, in the same way that I know that, like, my parents are still alive, even though I don't see them every day. You know what I mean? I don't mean it like, oh, you will it and it exists. It does exist. I just have to remind myself, even when I forget about my parents sometimes, like, I'm so busy with my life. I'm caught up with my life. I forget that my, parents are out there working and, doing their thing. And so in the same way, knowing that I'm loved, that's a knowledge, that is understanding, right? That's something that sits in my spirit, in my soul, in a way that circumstance can challenge it, and circumstance can make me not feel it, but it doesn't make it any less true. It just means that I'm not feeling it. I think marriage really is like the perfect analogy for a relationship with God for that specific reason. Like, I don't feel the love for my wife every single day. I'm not passionate about my wife every day of my life, but I love her, and it's like, that's there. And why do I love her? I love her because I love her. I love her because I promised I would. Like, emotion can only get you so far. With my point there, is that we tend to emphasize these things because we need something, right? A lot of false gospels come down to a need for validation. Half gospels. Let's call them half gospels, because it's just not the full truth. I know that would make it a false gospel, but it's like, it's more, there needs to be tweaking as opposed to you're completely wrong. Because at the end of the day, I would say the difference of a half gospel and a false gospel is a half gospel believes in God, Jesus, and the Trinity, the sacrifice of Jesus. It's just the emphasis. It's just what does that imply? which I think has been the argument for thousands of years. It's not that you're completely wrong or, off or whatever. It's still Christian. It's just a different emphasis. With that being said, again, like we Romans 1:25 gets at the heart of the matter, where it says we exchange the truth of God for a lie, and we worship creation rather than the Creator. And in this case, a lot of us, the creation that we worship is self. It's ourself. A lot of it has to do with ego, our fears and anxieties that we try to calm down. We try to fulfill our desires and quiet our fears with these false half gospels, and we try to, and it seemingly works till it's tested. We are scared that maybe the truth isn't enough, and I think that's where we get, a fear of being owned by God and the fear of our future and worrying about God's plan and the sovereignty of God and how much is he aware of what's going on. And, we mistake these things because we don't see sometimes the greater picture, which is, that's the meat of it, getting to that idea that we just don't think about God enough, that we don't set our minds to heaven. We don't set our minds to the kingdom. That doesn't mean, live like a monk or whatever, but like even the idea that we are eternal beings waiting to be reconnected to the Father has to be more real than I live in this house and I go to work and that, that's my life. Your identity on earth cannot trump your identity, your spirit's identity, your eternal identity. This is, Romans 12:2. This is Colossians 3:2. This is, what is it? 1 Peter 1:14, James 4:14, I think. It's just conforming yourself to the ways of this world, thinking that this is all and this world is the most important place, forgetting that we're sojourners in the experience of this realm. I know that sounds very like esoteric and, we're, out there and it's hippy dippy or whatever, but that is the case, and that needs to inform how we believe. With that being said, this segues us into Numbers 26, because Numbers 26, we are back at the border where the Israelites were 40 years ago. They do a census. You have the same amount of, let's say, firepower. The census is only for the men who are capable of fighting. I think the first census was done in Numbers 2, I think. There was 601,000 or so, and here we have 603,000 and something. So relatively the same amount of people, at least, that are capable of fighting. What scholars think is there's roughly around 1.5 to 2 million people total. This is kids and children, kids and women, right? And maybe older people that, can't fight. At the end, we read in verse 64, but among these, there was not one of these listed by Moses and Aaron the priest, who had listed the people of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. Essentially, everyone who was there 40 years ago didn't make it here. You know what I mean? They all died. What I think is interesting, we're now looking holistically. We're looking at the book of Numbers. We're looking at all the plagues, all the rebellions, all the acts of unfaithfulness, and it's weird, right? Because before I assumed, they all just died of age and blah blah blah, but like, if not most of them, probably died in these episodes of faithlessness. Just thinking about the facets of faithlessness that people died for, you know. That's what I have here. I have in my notes. So I guess let me see if reading it. It was 40 years wandering. The oldest in the census is 59 years old. People just didn't die from age. Some died because they didn't believe God could provide, that God was not leading them, that Moses killed the men / God's justice was unjust, rejecting God's provision, not taking God's word seriously. Right? This is all under the umbrella of faithlessness, of not taking Canaan. This is now a generation that doesn't want to be like their fathers and hopefully learn from their mistakes. That pretty much sums it up. So I guess I can break it down for you. But so we have doubt, we have sin, and have the episodes here. I do like an Excel sheet kind of, table. I make tables. I like tables, all right? It's organized, it's easy to read. But okay, so with the quail episode, the issue here, right? They're like, we want to eat meat. All this bread, but no meat. And so what underneath that, what we see is that that they believed that God could not provide, that God was not good. Like God doesn't care, that God isn't concerned, that God's not enough. God's not enough. Why that specifically? Well, because manna, I'm trying to make the connection of Jesus with manna, and he's the bread of life, and rejecting the bread of life, wanting more than the bread of life. That's wild. Like, when I make that connection, that's a wild thing, right? So rejecting the Lord's provision, rejecting what God has given us, saying that's not enough. I need more. I need something else. And a bunch of people died there. I will say, look, this isn't going to be like, the account of these 600,000 men all died from these plagues. But there were some plagues that there were no number to how many people died. Some of them were like 24,000 and 17,000, 14,000. That only doesn't even get you to 100,000. And let's say most of them did die from age, or, well, we'll read actually in verse 20, in chapter 27, when these ladies are talking and says, hey, our father didn't sin. He died in the wilderness for his own sins. That's the verbiage. That's the wording. And it's just like, oof, that's kind of dope. Like all of this was congressional issues that were treated with plagues. But people were dying for their own sins. And that doesn't mean a plague for one person. That's just being sick. But there's a reason why you had to die of age outside of the promised land kind of deal, which is crazy because then the children of this person saw it. And I think a lot of us are actually maybe in that position. For me, this was big. My dad talks about his testimony, but he gave his life early, when he was 20 years old. He's been a Christian. He's been a pastor for 30 years, less than a decade ago. He had a lot of unforgiveness and resentment that he gave up. And in that time span of him being a pastor and not giving that up, as I started, doing therapy and chasing after God for myself and realizing there's something off about this faith. There are things you're not trusting God with. There are things that you're not living by faith in. I see it, and it's black and white. There's no subjectivity here. By the grace of God, this isn't what I say. I didn't say, he missed out because of his own sins, but he was led to repentance and everything. And I just think a lot of us are probably in that. I got lucky. I know that my dad, it clicked for him. And a lot of us, have to deal with that evangelicalism that says, in 1973, on Wednesday, January 9th, I gave my life to Jesus at 6 p.m. And my life completely changed. And here I am. the same as the day my life changed. It's like, this is like a continuous thing, no? Because you possibly couldn't have changed everything in a moment. Well, I guess we'll continue. The 10 spies who say that the Canaanites were too big, saying, but the promise wasn't that they were going to take it. God said that I'm going to give you this land. So really it's this threat against his power. God is not powerful enough to do. So again, being earthly minded. The problem with Horma, we'll do it ourselves. Yes, the hills of Horma or whatever. When right after the 10 spies, they're like, oh no, we changed our minds, please. I'm not gonna wait in the desert for 40 years. This isn't this. Sorry, this ain't happening. And so they got together and went to war with the Canaanites and got wrecked, absolutely destroyed, decimated, and they all came back fleeing. The problem there wasn't that, oh, we repent, let's take the land. It was, wait, I would rather take my chances against these big guys than wait in the desert for 40 years and just die in the desert. Like, that's not happening. Like, it's almost like a Karen thing. Like, excuse me, that's not going to happen. What we're going to do is actually this. And Moses is like, you can talk, like, I talked to the manager and this is, what he says. Like, this is the case. I can't do anything about it. Like, no, this is unacceptable. And then they go and get wrecked. Total Karen moment. Absolutely. So yeah, God's timing is wrong. God's judgment is wrong. This ain't right. We can do it ourselves. Korah, the rebellion of Korah, right? Why are you in charge? We're all holy people. I don't understand that God's choice is unfair, that God wasn't in charge, that it was arbitrary, and that Moses was doing it on his own. I thought I wrote squats. I was like, I think this is just a workout plan. Like, eat quail, do squats. Oh man. No, but serpent, right? We hate the food and the wilderness. The sin here is that God's way is cruel, Like, why do we get this? What's going on? Like, this food sucks. We're in the desert. It's been so long. Oh my goodness. It's like, dude, God does not change his mind. Yeah, it's just a funny thing. Again, the story of Balaam, the people, where he prophesies, Balaam prophesies, God does not change his mind. And then the next chapter, they're complaining about stuff and the serpents come. And it's like, yeah, God's not going to change his mind. He decided you guys are dying in the wilderness and you guys continue to be faithless, right? You guys continue to see yourself as the hero and me as the villain. Like yeah. And so this is the worldly minded, this is the faithless generation that died in the wilderness. These are the reasons why they died. I didn't have numbers, but I know, kind of just remembering off the top of my head, like, I think the quail, serpents, there were 14K, 14.7. Quail, I don't think there was a number. The battle in Horma, there wasn't a number. The 10 spies, there were a couple deaths there. Yeah, I don't have a number. So let's look at the tests. Let's see the first generation response, the second generation response, right? Oh my gosh, the giants test, facing the giants. We're like grasshoppers. This is the first generation. Second generation says, the Lord delivered them to us, right? This is Sean and Og. What is that? What does that mean? I don't know. It's probably the people who said that. Or the cities Sihon and Og. I think they're cities. Okay. The inheritance test. The test, scarcity. Why did you bring us out here to die? Looking at, the land, I guess. And Gen 2 is like, give us our portion. They're like not fighting over, they're like debating, like, okay, well, if you get this piece of land and I get this piece of land, what happens if like our children intermarry? And how, I don't want to like fight over land with you guys. They're like mapping out Canaan as their own already, that's faith. It's like, oh no, yeah, God's going to take care. Like, this is ours, but we just need to figure this out so it's not messy when we get there, So they're doing that. The new leadership, right? They're constantly going at the neck and throat of Moses. Like, you've gone too far. Like, what's going on? What are you doing? You're the worst. Take us back to Egypt. And Gen 2 is like completely submitted to Joshua. And they're like, dude, you're the boss. You tell us what to do and we do it, bro, because you got it like that. I know you do. You've been anointed by Moses. God chose you. Let's get it, That simple. And what's the result? Gen 1 dies in the wilderness. Gen 2 enters the promised land. Israelites wanted to go back to Egypt. Reuben and Gad stayed to expand. Keep what was right for them. Right? That's chapter 26. Just seeing the parallel there. And seeing the parallels of why they died. The faithlessness that it took, like that they had, that resulted in their deaths, right? The purging, the cleaning of these faithless ideas, and then also just the comparison between the two generations, and seeing that God really is a generational God. God has a long-term plan. God's in it for the long haul. We're here living one generation, and God is mapping out, playing 5D chess, and like, this is what it's going to do. So like all of these plagues, we're seeing the wisdom of God's sovereignty here. And so all these plagues and this and that has molded, refined the minds and hearts of the future generation that would take Israel to be faithful, not because they're scared of being faithless. It's that I think there is proof in this is what God does to faithlessness when they went through so many faith, like things that should have garnered faith, that should have awakened faith, going through Egypt, seeing the plagues there, eating the clothes growing with them, like all of this. It's like, what the heck is going on? That should have given you enough faith to then go on, not complain, whatever. You've been given a testimony, and now your faith should reflect the testimony. The second generation sees, oh man, God was extremely faithful to y'all, and y'all like didn't believe in him. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy work. And so they, what did they do? Zero clue. What did they do? Tell me what they did. I don't know. I just have this intuition, this sense that that the way God dealt with the situation is actually the reason why they are faithful, but not out of fear of being unfaithful, but just seeing God's hand in everything, seeing how powerful he really is, and saying something like, well, if we were in rebellion and he did this to us, if we are obedient and living in his purpose, then what will he do for me? Like, he's obviously correcting us because we are his. And if we're corrected and we're moving the way we ought to, then what can we be capable of? What is God capable of when he's not taking time to discipline us, but actually moving us forward? Not slowing down to be like, hey, this is how things work, but just, okay, I'm with you 100%. Where are we going? I mean, we'll have to read in Joshua, their attitudes. Deuteronomy might be a doozy. We'll see. But let's continue. So chapter 27, verse 3. I'm just reading off my notes right now, man, because I do want to just get through this, because I don't know if there's a lot for me to like BS about, Bible study about, Yeah, anyways. So verse 3, our father died in the wilderness. He was not among the company of those who gathered themselves together against the Lord in the company of Korah, but he died for his own sin. And he had no sons, right? So they all died for their sin, whether corporate or private. I thought this was cool just in the instance again of dignifying women. But the daughters of Zelophehad are right. Okay, first of all, God says, God admits, hey, these women are right. Okay, look, maybe in this age you're like, that's wild work that you make that stand out. But one, this was written when women were property. So like, think about how forward thinking that is. But also, okay, yeah, everyone knows it, but I don't know if we act like it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. So God says that these women are right. What are they right about? You shall give possession of an inheritance among the father's brothers and transfer the inheritance of their father to them. So what was going on was, hey, our dad only had daughters and we don't get land. Where are we going to live? Like, what's going to happen to us? And like, you're absolutely right. Here is some land. The land your father would have received, he's dead, is going to be split amongst y'all, and it can't be taken by some uncle and blah, blah, blah. In another chapter, it gets a little weird and a little confusing, but I think it makes sense. But I know that puts limitations and blah, blah, blah. I'll just say it now. So the idea there is they would have to marry someone within their clan so that the land doesn't get married off into another clan, right? So like, it would be as if, let's say my wife's American and I'm Brazilian. We buy a house, or she has a house, and then we get married, and now this is Brazilian property because I'm Brazilian. That would be crazy, you know? That's like an act of terrorism, you know? And like, Brazil has a rightful claim over that land because I'm Brazilian and I'm married, you know? Like, that's insane. Like, that's how it worked, right? Because it was just a deed belonging to, you know, like a clan of people. But if we were both American or whatever the case is, then it would just stay within America. That's kind of the reason why they're like, hey, you got to marry within the clan. Which, like, all right, let's be honest. Okay, imagine America. Okay, you're in America. Most Americans marry Americans. They don't even think twice about like, you've taken my choices. I can't marry an Englishman or someone from Egypt or Japan. What are the chances of you even running into them in the first place? You know, like this is where you are. You're not getting out of here, you know? Like, especially back then, it was like it would take like days or months to like go anywhere else. So you just kind of stuck around. I don't know. It seems fair to me, but I'm also a guy. Like, I don't know. If someone was like, hey, you can only marry, you know, people in Texas, I'd be like, all right, well, you know, whatever. I'm sure out of the, you know, I don't know how many, like 10 million, 15 million, 30. No, I think just, I don't know, whatever, 50, let's say 50 million. I don't know how many people, you know, Texas. It's like, I'm sure I can find someone that I enjoy spending time with and I am attracted to, you know. I don't know. Okay, I don't know if that bothers you, but it don't bother me. So we move on. Yeah, so these are here my notes. So God dignifies the women by giving them land and saying they are correct. You either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. Moses chose to be a hero. Completely submissive. Why is that noted here? Oh, no. Verse 12 through 17. So essentially, he accepts that he's going to die. He gives over power he imparts his wisdom and spirit or something to Joshua. And he's like, all right, I'm ready whenever you are. And he's leading a little bit more. He's going to have his final speech, which is essentially what the book of Deuteronomy is like his final speech before he like goes and dies. So yeah, that's pretty much what happens in 27. It's a pretty short chapter, right? So again, the women give their grievances, which, I mean, to me, that's even cool. The fact that they can air out their grievances, you know, it's not like, the men are talking, you know, even back then. So to me, I bring this stuff up because like somewhere along the way, we were like, hey, women, shut up. But that was never the case. Like, Moses is there. It's like the chiefs are together, and then women had an issue. We're like, hey, my dad's land shouldn't just go to my uncle's. That's crazy. Like, we need a place to live. And it's like, you're absolutely right. So that happened. And then at the end, because it's only like, I don't know, 25 verses. And then the second half is God telling Moses, you're going to go see the land that I promised you. You're going to die because I told you were going to die because of the faithlessness, the unfaithfulness, and not keeping me holy. You're going to appoint Joshua as the new leader. And yeah, so that's 27, 28, and 29 are a bunch of laws. Ain't gonna lie. It's not that, I mean, look, I didn't get any significance from it, but I'm sure it's there. It's just a lot of studying of like this element. What does this represent? This number. What does that represent? And that doesn't interest me, if I'm just being honest and frank, right? But a couple things that do stick out, right? Because it's all like a mirror, a shadow of what is to come, right? But specifically in here, we get rules for rules for Passover and for the Feast of Booths, which, of course, are two important things because Jesus dies the night before Passover. And at the Feast of Booths, he's like, hey, you guys are eating bread. I'm the bread of life. Ain't that crazy? At the end of the Feast of Booths, so on the seventh day of the Feast of Booths, he's like, guys, we've been partying. We've been eating bread. I'm the bread of heaven. And that's like a direct, right? Because the Feast of Booths is in honor of them going through the wilderness. It's like a remembrance of what God has done and brought them out of slavery into freedom and brought them to the promised land and all this stuff, right? So that's what the Feast of Booths is about. And then during all this time, he's like, oh yeah, that freedom, I'm giving it to you. The manna that they received, I am the manna incarnate. I am their sustenance, and I am your sustenance. And they're like, I'm not going to eat you. This is cannibalism, and you are of the devil, right? And then sad life, sad time of rejection. And oh boy. So that's 28 and 29. And then chapter 30, I thought was very interesting. Verse 2. Oh my gosh, dude. Verse 2 says, if a man vows a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to bind himself by a pledge, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. And then there's other stuff, which before I get to, why is that crazy? That's not crazy. If you make a vow, you keep it. Well, I don't know if you remember, but Jesus says, let your yes be yes and no be no. And any vow on the temple, well, that's his throne. Any vow on earth, of any vowing on earth, like, any swear on earth, well, that's his footstool. You are swearing on things that don't belong to you to swear on. And that is evil. Jesus says that is evil. I think this is a contradiction to what Moses says. And I think that that Jesus has every right to contradict Moses because he is the word. In being the fulfillment of the word, he was also completing it, fixing some misunderstandings, some interpretations, some perspective issues. But in this case, just straight up changing it. You know what I mean? He's like, hey, if you make a vow, you better keep it. And Jesus is like, don't make vows. That's an evil thing. So, yeah, that's to me like a very, powerful thing. Of course, we see in the Sabbath, he seemingly breaks Sabbath all the time. But what's wilder than this is verse 3 through 15, where I'm just going to summarize it for you. But, okay, so essentially, if you're a woman and you make a vow, if you're not married, if your father hears the vow, he's like, no, that's not happening. Like, cancel the vow. And it's legit. If you're like, I swear on my life, or I don't know how, vows work. I don't know if it's just like a contract, right? So, I'm going to buy this property, and the father's like, heck no, you're going to go in debt. This is crazy. And he has every right to cancel the vow, and it's not doesn't hold any weight. But it has to be the day that he hears it, and he has to make his decision then, or like that moment then. If he's complicit to the vow, then it stands. And then when you get married, your husband can do the same thing. Again, that's like the problem. I don't want to just throw this into, this is old school patriarchy, misogynistic, and move on. Everything paints a picture towards this greater thing. What is that? That I just want to explore that a little bit. Like, go with me, Let him cook. Let the Bible cook. What if we can null contract agreements? No, I'm just kidding. that would be good, right? I'm sorry. No, that's messed up. No, but okay. So what? It's a wild thing. Don't get me wrong. Women can be. I'm giving you permission. Women are autonomous. Women are independent. We're not debating anything like that. But what is the wisdom in this? What can we learn and glean from? And maybe how can this kind of change our perspective on headship? Maybe it's a little wild. I don't know. Write in the comments. Is it wild for a guy to just be like, "Hey, this is how women should think about submission"? I don't know. I'm so nervous right now. Okay. And I'm burying my foot in that conversation. This is like the third episode. I'm over here. Yeah. Of course. Okay. So back to what an ideal man is supposed to be, right? So the ideal categories for man. Again, I'm sorry if this is like your 10th time listening to this. But there's boy, man, good man, great man. Okay. What is a boy? A boy does what he wants, right? Like, when I'm done here, like, I eat when I want, I do what I want. There's no responsibility. There's no weight. There's no purpose, no intention to his life. He's just kind of going with it. A man has all that sorted out to the effect of sacrificing to get those goals and be intentional and be purposeful, right? Having a direction and purpose in life means that you've kind of knocked out all other possibilities for your life. You're like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And you structure your life for that thing. Not on some like Marty Supreme, ambition, but you just need to figure your life out. And that's what that means, is making decisions on who am I going to be? Am I going to be this person? Am I going to be consistent? Can I do that? And that takes time to figure out. So boy to man, this is what maturing as a man looks like, right? A good man then will say, okay, it's not about me, it's about us. The same logic, the same thing applies to this, right? So we have an intention, we have goals, we have a purpose. We are not just together for a purpose. We're together because we're together and we promised each other and this and that. But my hopes of bettering your life, making you feel safe, making you feel secure financially, emotionally, physically, mentally, I don't know, any other way, right? Like, just in every way make you feel secure. To me, that's like, that's the princess treatment. You know what I mean? It's making you feel like you don't have to worry about anything. And then a great man does the same, expands that to society and whatever, right? But the thing is, like, can you be a great man and also be a good man? It's like, can you be great for society and also good for your family? I don't know, because I think it takes a lot of sacrifice to be a great man. And sometimes you sacrifice your families. So it's like, I don't know. That's a crazy thing. Maybe I just need to work that out, that's like a personal, like, can you be great without sacrificing family? Like, what's the cost of greatness? And does it have to involve your family? Look, Marty Supreme is a freaking crazy movie, bro. If you haven't watched it, golly, you gotta watch it, dude. I'm telling you, it's fire. I mean, look, there's debauchery and fornication and all that stuff. But look, I mean, and it's all kind of implied. There's no crazy scenes in there. Well, no, it's not implied. I'm saying you just don't see whatever, bro. It's a good movie. I enjoy it. The ending, mind blowing, bro. Mind blowing. Okay. So then, yeah, I don't know if I want to talk about this. Yeah, look, this is my favorite topic to talk about. And I think it actually has to do more with how traumatic ministry was when I talked about this. I think that still goes through my head. I have my opinions. I think they're good. And I think they're loving and wise. But I think people really don't care for that, because as soon as they hear men are trying to control women, that's like all they hear. And that's not really what I'm talking about. I guess my second point, I was going to bring up like girl math as a silly example, but as something that's also very serious in the sense that, like, yeah, I've rehashed this. Look, ideally, if you have a good man as a father, he is always looking out for your best intentions, even if things are his decision over your life. I mean, that's parenting for the most part. You're deciding things for them because you love them and you know what's best for them. The sense of being a father, you have, I think ideally, a man takes fatherhood into account before they become a father, in the sense that what they practice in sacrifice and doing the best for loving, for peace, for security, what they do for those things, they're already kind of thinking, like, this is how I'm going to be with my wife. This is how I'm going to be with my kids. You're the caretaker, not in a babysitting sense, but in a all responsibility falls on your shoulders. But that's what you've prepared your whole life for, and for you to just be on board and be considerate of that. I mean, even now, like, look, and I know, right? Being in youth group, you hear a lot of horror stories of like these parents having crazy decisions over kids' lives. But that can't escape, again, they can't escape from that idea that people are doing their best, and that can't inform who God is and what Christianity is, but it can't inform what the ideal is. I think you should let God take care of what the ideal is. And I think that's kind of where I want to stop for now. Next chapter is dicier. Well, I mean, it's not dicey. For some people, this conversation is way harder. But yeah, a whole bunch of people die next chapter. Some would argue needlessly. Some people would argue unjustly. So we'll figure it out. But yeah, that it's always a tough topic for me. One, being a guy speaking on women, like how women should think and act and whatever, like that's always rough. But also, I just know how it sounds, but we're all subordinate. So I don't know. And I feel like these episodes are off, but you know what? I'm just going through and sharing my ideas like I always do. And these ideas just seem a little more uncomfortable than normal. And that's that, brother. Is there anything else? Yeah, whatever, man. All right. See you guys. Thank you so much. Hey guys, thank you so much for going on this journey with me. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, follow, and remember, there is more to life, and that is good news. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.